Now, the thing about asking for feedback is that you often get plenty of negative feedback when you make a mistake, but rarely do you get feedback about what is good and why it's good, which is a real problem. It's much harder to make a good, polished product if you don't have a grasp of both your idea's flaws and its strong points. But I actually got good feedback about my first draft of my Holy Spec talent tree. How often does that happen? And when I ask how often does that happen, I mean in general, not just about me and my crazy ideas. Anyhow, in a lot of ways, I'm not exactly sure what to do with this video. If I explain what's in the Holy Talent Tree, then I'm just going to be rehashing one of my previous videos, which explained what I put into that tree and where and why. So I've decided to go over what I did and why as quickly as possible in this video, talk about the differences between this second draft and my first draft, and put a link in the description to my video about the first draft so you can get more details there if you want them. Oh, and I talk about where each existing holy talent could be placed, since I didn't place them all in my first draft. Now, for context, Holy Paladins are in a funny position in terms of our class design. From vanilla up until around Legion, our playstyle has revolved around hard-casting Holy Light and Flash of Light, but around Battle for Azeroth and throughout Shadowlands, a new playstyle emerged where we go into melee and use Crusader Strike and cooldown-reduced Holy Shocks to build up Holy Power, and then use Light of Dawn to heal. And today's numbers make that more efficient and effective than the old hard-casting playstyle. Rarely, if ever, does the melee playstyle cast Flash of Light or Holy Light. And while I personally play the hardcast playstyle and want it to be supported, I don't think that the melee playstyle should stop being supported. In other words, the talents that we get in Dragonflight should provide choices that let us pick either a melee playstyle or a casting playstyle. So I designed my ideal class spec tree so that the talents that support the melee playstyle are over on the left, and the talents that support the hardcast playstyle are over on the right. Holy Light and Infusion of Light are shallow in the talents on the right, and Light of the Martyr and Crusader's Might are shallow on the left. This is the idea that I got good feedback on. Anyhow, with regard to the differences between my first draft and the second draft, the most obvious differences are in the shallowest talents. I had to move Light of Dawn out and Holy Shock and Beacon of Light in. I also decided to move Bestow Faith closer to the center because both the hardcast playstyle and the melee playstyle can benefit from it. I moved Avenging Crusader higher up to fill in the void, and also moved Untempered Dedication higher up again to fill in the same void. I strongly suspect that the strengths of my ideal Holy Spec talents include the fact that it supports both playstyles, it brings back some good passives like the Daybreak passives, Aura of Mercy, Protector of the Innocent, and Resplendent Light, it brings back a spell that's identical in all but name to the Holy Radiant spell we had in Mists and Warlords. I gush about why I loved that particular spell in the detailed video. It gives players the option of replacing our current mastery with our older Warlords of Draenor mastery, and it has a few new abilities. A new strike for the melee playstyle, details of which are to be determined, Uther's Holy Radiance instant cast group heal, and a powerful single target hard cast heal on a cooldown. Now, I started by talking about my tree's strengths. I do want to move on to the weaknesses, but I just have to start a rant here. These spells, they're new. Blizzard's talent trees so far don't even attempt to include any new spells. I mean, they've got returning abilities, which are good, though I should add, unpruning abilities is necessary but not sufficient. The way I see it, Blizzard should aim to have around 3 new active abilities for each spec. Those active abilities can be really deep talents like I have here. They can be mutually exclusive. They can be optional talents in the middle of trees that would have otherwise gone into talent grids in an expansion like Shadowlands of Mist of Pandaria that uses talent grids. Heck, the new spells could be baseline abilities. The point is, there should be a new active abilities. New stuff is what gets players excited, and a proper comeback expansion will need new abilities to get players excited to return. True as it may be that the new abilities in Shadowlands, the Covenant abilities, bummed players out, that's not because they were new abilities. It bummed us players out because of the restrictions and requirements attached to those new abilities. New abilities are genuinely great, but their greatness can be and was negated by giving them to players in the wrong ways. With that rant out of the way, here's what I suspect the weaknesses are in my Holy Spec tree. For starters, Draft 1 omitted too many talents, a flaw I plan to fix later in this video. Another weakness, I have a lot of multi-target healing in here. There's my unpruned Holy Radiance spell from Warlords that I renamed to Divine Circle. There's Resplendent Light, there's Glimmer. I mean, just because the numbers don't favor Glimmer in Shadowlands doesn't mean that they won't favor them in Dragonflight. There's a passive talent that makes Holy Shock do splash damage under some circumstances. There's Returning Covenant abilities, there's Tyr's Deliverance, there's Uther's new Holy Radiance spell. That's quite a bit. Oh, and let's not forget Holy Prism. Let's compare that to the group healing talents that Blizzard has in their restoration talents. And I'm defining group healing talents as talents that either are multi-target heals or that can cause multiple targets to be healed more effectively. I'm not just defining them as any old thing that buffs group heals in any way. Anyhow, what Blizzard has includes Efflorescence, Improved Wild Growth, Unstoppable Growth, Tranquility, Soul of the Forest, Improved Tranquility and Wild Growth, there's a placeholder name if I ever saw one, Spring Blossoms, Memory of the Mother Tree, oh boy, there's a lot of gray areas in here, I'll say Flourish. That is 6 passives and 3 active abilities compared to my 3 passives and 6 actives. Maybe I'm in the ballpark here? I could use some feedback on this. I went into writing this script thinking I had too much group healing, but now that I've gone and done this count, I'm not as sure. Obviously, this tree is incomplete. There are only 24 talents in my Holy Spec talent tree, and the number of talents in Blizzard's spec trees varies around the low to high 30s. The incompleteness is by design. I think Blizzard will respond better to incomplete designs because incomplete designs allow them to fill in the gaps with whatever they think is prudent. Not to mention it gives them plenty of space to move things around if they want to. Which also means, just because a talent like Divine Purpose or Awakening doesn't appear in this Holy Spec tree or the class tree, doesn't mean I think it shouldn't be in the final trees. It just means I hadn't thought of a place to put it yet. I do want the Holy Talents to make the trip from Shadowlands to Dragonflight. I figured most of them would be somewhere in the middle of the Holy Spec tree, I just hadn't settled on where as of my first draft. But you know what? I think I can improve my second draft if I spitball some placements now. I'll probably get some things wrong, but whatever. That's what second drafts are for. And I'm posting this in the general forum, and if there's nothing negative to say about something, then people in the general forum won't say anything about it. So, who wants to be ignored? Time to take chances, make mistakes, and get messy. Divine Purpose and Holy Avenger should probably be an octagon in the middle of the class tree with no prerequisites, since all 3 specs can use them. I'm not sure where Seraphim would go. Maybe it would be a highly connected talent in Retribution's column that could be at a crossroads of one of those crossovers that I speak of so highly, though that might make it a must-have for anyone who wants to traverse a crossover, and I feel like it's the kind of thing that ought to be a choice, not a must-have. Blizzard must run into hard decisions like this all the time when they're designing these things. Icy Veins says that Seraphim is a good pick for Retribution, okay for Holy, and bad for Protection, so I guess Seraphim would be in Retribution's column, possibly as a skippable talent. Let's put it next to Divine Strength and Justicar's Vengeance in a kind of a 3-lane highway. A Judgment of Light would make sense shallow between Retribution and Holy, though I'd need to push Denounce 1 tier deeper to make space for it. Though alternatively, I could make Denounce another tier 1 root talent with no prerequisites that is, again, very easily skippable. It's strange to keep calling for skippability on the ability that I want most to be unpruned in Dragonflight, but the reality is not every Paladin was going to want to spend a talent point to get their hands on a hard-cast damage spell. So not everyone should need to, hence the calls for skippability. I want Denounce unpruned, but I want it unpruned correctly. Anyhow, back to the Holy Talents that are in Shadowlands. Saved by the Light belongs somewhere in Holy Spec's tree, probably shallow, middle-ish. while Awakening belongs deeper in Holy Spectre, probably a little closer to the left since the melee playstyle makes heavy use of Light of Dawn. Rule of Law and Cavalier should be an octagon somewhere in the middle, maybe a little over to the left. Unbreakable Spirit, probably it could go anywhere in the class talents as long as it's fairly shallow. Fist of Justice, never cared much about it either way, but I figure it's fitting in Retribution's tree, maybe in between Retribution and Protection. I think that covers all the talents in Holy's current Shadowlands talent grid. Again, I undoubtedly made some mistakes, but again, that's what second drafts are for. Please let me know what you think, and cross your fingers that Blizzard's not just whistling Dixie, again, when they say that they're eager to hear our feedback. I sure know I want feedback on my ideas.